Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. Today we'll be discussing on we call narrow complex tachycardia or narrow QRS tachycardia, or we also use the word supraventricular tachycardia. So we'll be talking on that particular topic. I'll try to make it as simple as possible because it is very complicated, but as much simplified as possible so you can understand well. If you understand well, you will remember, and if you remember, you will know, you will recognize, and you will look for that particular thing in a ECG. Before I start, let me declare something that I'm a general physician. I'm not a MD cardiologist, and I'm still a student. I'm still learning all these things. So if I commit some mistake, please pardon me. So again, see more and more number of ECG, listen to more and more person, so you will know more and more. So you will be able to identify what we call as a supraventricular tachycardia or narrow QRS tachycardia. So again, this slide I have shown you before in what we call as a beginning of the arrhythmias introduction. So you can go through. This all looks alike, but they are different. Here, someone will say this is a wine glass, but these are the two people who are talking with each other. Same way, these are the two people, or you can call this as a parapet in a terrace. These are all looking alike. They are all tachycardias, but they are not same. So have a look properly. These are all narrow complex tachycardia. Only this is broad complex tachycardia. So all this will belong to what we call as a supraventricular tachycardia, while this is ventricular tachycardia. Supraventricular tachycardia can be narrow complex or can be broad complex. We'll be talking of that difference in next lecture. But ventricular tachycardia invariably always is broad. Very rarely it is a narrow complex tachycardia. So that we'll be discussing in a ventricular tachycardia. So this is sinus tachycardia. This is ectopic atrial tachycardia. This is nodal tachycardia or we call junctional tachycardia. This is paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, and this is ventricular tachycardia or we call wide QRS tachycardia. So what is tachycardia? Anytime if the heart rate is more than 100 per minute, we call that as tachycardia. Now depending upon the origin, it can be from SA node or it can be from atrium or it can be from AV node. So whenever it is from that particular, we put a prefix sinus node tachycardia, atrial tachycardia, nodal tachycardia. Now what is the characteristic of this supraventricular tachycardia? Supraventricular tachycardia, P wave will be present, QRS complex will be narrow, and in case of atrial and nodal, P wave may be abnormal. While in a sinus tachycardia, P wave is normal. It can be regular, it can be irregular. Almost majority of the supraventricular tachycardia are with narrow QRS complex. But some of the supraventricular tachycardia we call supraventricular tachycardia with aberrancy are usually broad QRS tachycardia. So we divide into two big groups. Wide QRS tachycardia where QRS complex is more than 3 small square, we call 0.12 second, and narrow complex we call that the QRS complex is less than 0.12 second, that is we call as a narrow QRS complex tachycardia. So this is an introductory part. So whenever you approach to a classification of a supraventricular tachycardia, you use a different things like clinical presentation, mechanism, how the tachycardia is induced, depending on the QRS complex and depending upon the site of origin. So depending upon the clinical presentation, we can use the word paroxysmal, persistent, permanent, incessant, sustained, non-sustained, chronic, repetitive, etc. And there are many more words depending upon the variety of tachycardia. By mechanism wise, if it is arising because of an ectopic focus, it is called ectopic tachycardia, or if it is because of automaticity which is increased, enhanced automaticity, or there is a re-entry phenomena, and this re-entry phenomena can be orthodromic or antidromic. These are the varieties of mechanisms, and depending upon the QRS complex we call as a narrow or wide, and location wise or we call origin wise, sinus, atrial, nodal, or we call junctional. That is a part which is included in a supraventricular tachycardia. So there are some terms. The paroxysmal means there is one episode and followed by a normal rhythm, and again there is a recurrence. That's why we call that as a paroxysmal. So there is an episode, sudden onset, terminates, normal rhythm, and again recurs. While a persistence means one which exists and terminates with treatment, we call persistent. So there is a long period of arrhythmia, and once you treat, it terminates. We call that as a persistent variety. An incessant variety is one that continues without stopping on itself. It cannot stop on itself. A permanent means which persists despite of treatment. So you give a treatment, if it subsides, it is persistent. If it doesn't subside, we call that as a permanent, which can be refractory, or we use the word chronic. Refractory is utilized on the criteria of the treatment part. If this is because of the re-entry phenomena, because of presence of an abnormal conductive pathways, that is we call accessory pathway. So that we call as a pre-excitation tachyarrhythmias. And there is another we call as a reciprocating, which existent, one being active, other being refractory during conduction of an impulse. We use the word reciprocating. This is a word which is utilizing in re-entry tachycardias. Now in atrial fibrillation, there are few words which are being little different. If it is less than 7 days, it is called paroxysmal. If it is more than 7 days, we use the word persistent. If it is a very long lasting, more than 1 year, then we call long lasting. And if even after cardioversion, it persists, then we call permanent. But in an elderly person, if the person who do not have a hypertension or heart disease and he develops atrial fibrillation, it is called lone atrial fibrillation. We'll be talking of all this when we discuss on a chapter on atrial fibrillation and flutter. Now we come to the common types. There are six basic common variety of tachyarrhythmias. One, sinus tachycardia, which arises from sinus node. There is a atrial fibrillation and atrial flutter, which is irregular, very commonly irregular, and because of re-entry in atrium. There is another variety we call the multifocal atrial tachycardia, and there is something called as a supraventricular tachycardia. All these are a part of a supraventricular tachycardia, but a separate terms which is being utilized for supraventricular tachycardia we call as a AVNRT, that is AV nodal re-entry tachycardia, or atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia. This is because of accessory bundle, and this is WPW syndrome, while AVNRT is very commonly because of LGL or because of re-entry phenomena taking place in a AV node itself. Because in AV node there is a slow pathway, there is a rapid pathway, or a fast track, slow track, and there is a re-entry in that particular pathway. So that will produce AV node re-entry tachycardia. And there is a third group we call as the atrial tachycardias, which can be multifocal atrial tachycardia. So all these 5 varieties will typically show you narrow complex QRS tachycardia. Very frequently there is an underlying bundle branch block or pre-excitation like WPW syndrome, or there is a use of some drugs which prolongs QRS complex like class 1 or class 1C antiarrhythmic drugs, or person develops profound hyperkalemia. So person who has got this variety of a supraventricular tachycardias, and if he has got any one of this like bundle branch block or pre-excitation like WPW, or because of drugs or because of hyperkalemia, it will become wide QRS complex tachycardia. We use the word SVT with aberrancy. So aberrancy in SVT is produced because of bundle branch block, pre-excitation, that is WPW. I am repeating again and again so that you will understand. If there is none of this, it will be a narrow complex. If these are there and there is bundle branch block, WPW, or the person is on some drugs, class 1A or class 1C type of antiarrhythmic drugs, and person has got hyperkalemia, it will be a wide QRS complex tachyarrhythmias. And then this becomes a very close differential diagnosis from ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular tachycardia has got little bad prognosis, which can be monomorphic, can be polymorphic, and we'll be discussing many more things regarding ventricular tachycardia when we discuss on ventricular tachycardia. So almost always we say that if there is a wide QRS complex tachycardia, unless proven otherwise, consider that as a ventricular tachycardia. But do not forget that SVT with aberrancy, because of these conditions, can produce broad complex or broad QRS tachyarrhythmias. So tachycardia can be divided one by regular and irregular. This is one technique of differentiating tachycardia. If it is absolutely regular, it can be supraventricular or ventricular tachycardia. If it is irregular, it can be SVT with ventricular fibrillation, or even we can put one more here, that is polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular fibrillation and polymorphic ventricular tachycardia are irregularly irregular. And in irregular variety in SVT, usually it will be because of atrial fibrillation or multifocal atrial tachycardia or atrial flutter with variable block. And these three varieties will be irregular and with narrow QRS complex tachycardia. While this particular group, that is supraventricular tachycardia, which is absolutely regular, can be sinus tachycardia, atrial flutter with a fixed block, junctional tachycardia, AV node re-entry tachycardia, and atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia. These are all 6 different varieties which will be narrow complex or narrow QRS tachyarrhythmias. And this will become broad complex QRS or broad QRS tachyarrhythmias if person has got bundle branch block, or person has got aberrant pathway like WPW syndrome, or person is on a drugs which are antiarrhythmic drugs belong to class 1A or class 1C, or person is developing severe hyperkalemia. In this group, you will have SVT becoming broad QRS tachyarrhythmias. And even this variety, which is an irregular variety of an SVT, will be with a broad QRS tachyarrhythmias. So putting all together, this is the one slide which you can go through. What I've already shown you here, the same is repeated here, but it is divided into 2 groups, atrial variety and junctional variety. So just go through that. This is one way of classifying. The best way is this. Best way is this. And then you can divide according to the entry phenomena. So if it is AV dependent junctional tachycardia, means it is dependent on a AV node and it is close to the junction. It can be AV node re-entry tachycardia, which is divided into typical and atypical variety. Atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia, which is because of a accessory bundle of which can be in a left ventricle or it can be right ventricle, we call WPW syndrome. or it is a junctional ectopic tachycardia. So these are AV node dependent. So one of the pathway is through the AV node. While AV node independent atrial tachycardia can be sinus tachycardia, which can be physiological, or you can call that as an inappropriate sinus tachycardia or sinus node re-entry tachycardia. Usually this is a very rare variety. We don't see, and it is very difficult to diagnose unless you subject them to EP study, we call electrophysiological study. And there is an, as far as the atrial variety is concerned, we call it the atrial tachycardia, which can be focal or can be multifocal. In that, the multifocal is more common than focal variety. And you can have another variety which is totally independent of AV node. So all these three varieties are independent of AV node: atrial flutter and fibrillation. So these are one another way of classifying, where re-entry tachycardias is because of the pathway. One of the pathway is through the AV node, and here the AV node is not involved in tachyarrhythmias. Now this is a combination of tachycardia with narrow QRS complex and regular. So tachycardia is common. If it is narrow and regular, these are the groups. If it is narrow and irregular, these are the group which we have already shown you before. So regular and irregular we have shown you before. And this is wide QRS, regular, and wide QRS irregular variety. These three stars shows you that this is supraventricular, that is SVT with bundle branch block, atrial fibrillation with bundle branch block, and P excitation with atrial fibrillation, or we call as a rapid rate. This three variety will have broad complex supraventricular tachycardia. So this is one another way. Combining all this together, you can have tachycardia which can be regular with narrow complex, can be regular with wide complex, can be irregular with narrow complex, and irregular with wide complex. And we have already told you, if it is a narrow complex, by and large it is a supraventricular tachycardia. So these are by and large supraventricular tachycardia. While broad complex are usually what we call as a ventricular tachycardia, but you can see here, these are supraventricular with aberrancy. These are supraventricular with aberrancy. So this is a wide complex supraventricular tachycardia with aberrancy. And in this, we should include what we call as a ventricular tachycardia, which is a broad complex tachyarrhythmias. But as we are discussing supraventricular tachycardia, I have not put ventricular tachycardia here. So this is a wide QRS supraventricular tachycardia. There is a narrow complex supraventricular tachycardia. So this is same, but here it is a combination of tachycardia, narrow and wide complex, and regular and irregular. And this I have put ventricular tachycardia here so that you can understand. So ventricular tachycardia becomes a close differential diagnosis of narrow complex or narrow QRS supraventricular arrhythmias with aberrancy, and we call as antidromic variety of AVRT. So this becomes a closed differential diagnosis we'll be discussing in a separate chapter. And these are all the group where these are pure supraventricular tachycardia, maybe regular, maybe irregular. So sinus, atrial, and nodal, or we call junctional, are supraventricular, and pure ventricular is ventricular tachycardia. This is a narrow complex QRS tachycardia. There is another way depending upon the RP interval, that is from beginning of the R wave till P wave. So this is called RP interval. So if there is a short RP interval, means P wave is just before QRS complex, it is typical AVNRT, or it can be AVRT. These two groups, and these are re-entry tachycardias, and these are always narrow complex tachycardias. But if there is a long RP interval, then means from a P wave or from a QRS complex, that is R wave, till beginning of the P wave, it is prolonged. So whenever it is prolonged, so you will call that as what we call as long RP interval. And whenever there is a long RP interval, it can be a typical variety of AVNRT or AVRT with retrograde conduction, or we call antidromic variety, or permanent form of a junctional tachycardia, or atrial tachycardia with sinoatrial node re-entry tachycardias, inappropriate sinus tachycardia, etc. These are all with long RP interval. So you can divide this another way. Here it is less than 0.20 second and here it is more than 0.8 second. So depending upon that, you try to identify which variety it is. This is one way of identifying. You can utilize RP interval. We'll not be discussing wide QRS at present, but this is one classification which we always put. Tachycardia, wide QRS, regular and irregular. We have already put that before. So this is a separate, this we'll be discussing in a separate group. We call as a wide QRS tachycardia, and we'll be giving a difference between a supraventricular and ventricular variety. We'll call ventricular variety. We'll be talking that in a separate chapter. So wide QRS can be ventricular tachycardia or SVT with aberrancy. We'll be talking that separately. So you can see here that is in one example. If we don't have this written here, we'll consider this as a ventricular tachycardia. And by and large, it can be treated as a ventricular tachycardia. No harm if it is treated as a ventricular tachycardia. But if it was what we call as ventricular tachycardia and you treat this as an SVT with aberrancy, it can be risky. So in the next chapter, we'll be discussing difference between SVT and VT. So you will be able to differentiate between SVT with aberrancy and ventricular tachycardia. So we'll be discussing that separately. So sometimes this is a broad complex or broad QRS tachyarrhythmias. So whenever you see this, always keep it in mind. Try to rule out it is ventricular tachycardia or SVT with aberrancy. Now we go to the etiology side of a supraventricular tachycardia. It can be congenital, which is because of WPW syndrome or LGL. The most common cause is ischemic heart disease among acquired group, and we call acute myocardial infarction. So AMI can result into an acute episode, and acute or chronic variety you can come across, or recurrent variety you can come across in ischemic heart disease. Anxiety, fever can result. Thyrotoxicosis invariably will have a supraventricular tachycardia in the form of a atrial tachyarrhythmias like multifocal atrial tachycardia, atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation. Those are very common with thyrotoxicosis. Myocarditis, left atrial enlargement is very common because of MS, MR or AR, and in this, because of atrial dilatation or atrial enlargement, there is irritation and that produces atrial flutter fibrillation, very common. And secondary to atrial flutter fibrillation, there is a stasis, and because of stasis there is a thrombus formation, and there is a very high chance of thromboembolism. In a case of a cardiomyopathy, particularly very commonly in ischemic cardiomyopathy or congenital variety or infiltrative variety, this can also have a lot number of supraventricular tachyarrhythmias. Don't forget drugs like digoxin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they can produce tachyarrhythmias. Electrolyte imbalance like potassium imbalance, particularly hyperkalemia, and once in a while even a hypokalemia can also end up with tachyarrhythmias. While magnesium imbalance can also produce more of a ventricular tachyarrhythmias rather than atrial tachyarrhythmias. In a sick sinus syndrome, because when the sinus node is not firing, atrium is irritable and that starts firing, and you can have an atrial arrhythmias which will be a supraventricular tachycardias in presence of sick sinus syndrome. And when you can't confirm any one of these above diagnosis, you label that as an idiopathic variety. Now, the commonest cause of sinus tachycardia is dehydration, hypotension, sepsis, fever, severe anemia, hypoxia, exercise, drug intoxications, drug withdrawal, congestive heart failure, pain and anxiety, psychosis, delirium, hyperthyroidism, idiopathic like inappropriate sinus tachycardia, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, etc. In this, there will be good number of conditions which are almost non-pathogenic like pain, anxiety, psychosis, delirium, exercise, etc. These are some of the non-pathogenic and some are pathological. You must keep it in mind. So if a person has got sinus tachycardia, do rule out it is pathogenic or non-pathogenic. While we'll be discussing this in detail when we discuss an atrial fibrillation, but I've given two common groups. Left atrial dilatation in case of hypertension, congestive heart failure, mitral valve disease like MSMR, or sometime also in case of an aortic regurgitation, and also in case of a coronary artery disease, you can have a left atrial dilatation, and that can result into atrial tachyarrhythmias because of a micro re-entry phenomena, and this is very, very common. And these are the conditions where we don't know the mechanism, like cardiac surgery, certain drugs, particularly cocaine and amphetamine, alcohol intoxication, obstructive sleep apnea, pulmonary embolism, hyperthyroidism, hypomagnesemia and hypokalemia. And even in case of a hyperkalemia also, you cannot identify why they develop atrial fibrillation. So we'll be discussing this in a chapter of atrial fibrillation. By and large, there are regular supraventricular tachycardia in adults. 90% of these are because of a re-entry phenomena, and only 10% are because of other than re-entry phenomena. And re-entry phenomena can be AV nodal re-entry, which are 60%, and 30% are because of orthodromic reciprocating tachycardias. Short form we call it the ORT, orthodromic reciprocating tachycardias. So this is orthodromic re-entry tachycardias. And only 10% are atrial tachycardia, which is because of a re-entry phenomena in an atrium itself, like atrial flutter, atrial fibrillations, and multifocal atrial tachycardias. While 2 to 5% are because of AV, atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia, and that is because of WPW syndrome, or we call it the Wolff Parkinson White syndrome. So do remember the commonest is re-entry. Out of that, 60% is AV-NRT, 30% is reciprocating tachycardias, or we call orthodromic tachycardias, and only 2 to 5% are because of atrioventricular re-entry tachycardias. Mechanism we have discussed many times, and we have discussed in a arrhythmias chapter. That is because of abnormal automaticity, or there is a triggered activity in that depolarization zone because of digoxin toxicity, or because of torsada pointes, or because of other drugs like cocaine, amphetamine, etc. The digoxin being most common, and 90% of the time, you can see here again, 90% of the time it is because of re-entry. So 10% of this are because of abnormal automaticity or triggered activity. So always look for a re-entry tachycardias whenever you look in a supraventricular tachycardia. So mechanism, location and frequency. Location wise, atrial, or we call as a junctional. Mechanism wise, we have already told you automaticity or a re-entry mechanisms. And frequency wise, we say paroxysmal, sustained, permanent, chronic, etc. These are all the terminology we have given you before. This is in summary that tachyarrhythmias is because of enhanced automaticity, which can be automaticity in SA node, automaticity in a latent pacemakers, which are hidden pacemakers, or abnormal automaticity, which can occur, and that produces enhanced automaticity, which will produce tachyarrhythmias, or there is an increased trigger activity, or there is a re-entry phenomena. So these are the three groups: increased automaticity, triggered activity, and re-entry. Re-entry is almost 90%, 10% are these groups. So always look for this. If this is ruled out, then only enhanced automaticity or trigger activity is the part. And in a trigger activities, very frequently it is because of the drugs. So always look for the drug toxicity like digoxin, cocaine, alcohol, etc. Or we call as a sympathomimetic drugs. So altered impulse formation, altered conduction, that is re-entry phenomena. And again in a re-entry we have told you in a AV node and in atrioventricular re-entry tachycardias, and once in a while very odd variety, SA node re-entry tachycardias. Now, these are the three diagrams showing you that three particular varieties, how exactly it happens, and just I am showing you what happens. Once the impulse comes to the AV node, in a AV node there is a slow pathway and rapid pathway. So through that two pathway, it re-enters again and again, and that impulse passes through the bundle to the interventricular septum, right bundle and left bundle, and activates the ventricle. So when it is a node which is taking a part, AV node which is taking a part in a re-entry phenomena, that's why it is called the AV node re-entry tachycardia. And depending upon the severity, it will produce the variety of a tachyarrhythmias. While in a case of a atrioventricular reciprocating tachycardia, or we call AV, atrioventricular re-entry tachycardias, in that the impulse travels through this, but there is a re-entry through this accessory bundle. So the re-entry is from the ventricle to the atrium, or it is from the atrium to the ventricle. Depending upon that, you call the antidromic or orthodromic. So these particular words are utilized, and whenever it enters through this, that's why it is called atrioventricular reciprocating, that is re-entry tachycardias, and that is very commonly in a WPW syndrome. This is showing you on a right ventricle side. So this is a accessory bundle of Kent present in the right side. While in a variety of an atrial tachycardia, you can see that there is a re-entry in the atrium itself, and when there is a re-entry in the atrium itself, it will produce unifocal atrial tachycardia, or if it is with a multiple focus, then we call it a multifocal atrial tachycardia. But in this, as the impulse passes through the AV node and normal pathway, always this will be a narrow complex tachyarrhythmias. So these are all which are passing normally through the bundle of his, and then it is activating the ventricle. That's why all this will be a narrow complex. But if all these three varieties, there is presence of what we call as bundle branch block, or it is a rate related, or it is because of a WPW syndrome, then you can have a broad QRS complex tachyarrhythmia. I can show you the mechanism here. You can see the impulses arise from SA node. It is passed through the atrium. It comes to the AV node. It passes through this. And if this is coming from an atrial focus, and if in atrial focus there is a re-entry and it is generating the impulse at the fast rate, all those impulses will pass through the AV node, will pass through the bundle of his, through both the bundle, and activates right ventricle as well as left ventricle. So it will produce a narrow complex tachyarrhythmia. We'll call that as a, if this is a single focus, unifocal atrial tachycardia. If it is because of multiple focus and re-entry, we'll call multifocal atrial tachycardia. Now you can see here, I am showing you another variety where impulse is not arising from the supraventricular focus. It is not from the above the AV node. It is from the AV node itself. This is a slow pathway, this is a fast pathway. So there is a re-entry from slow pathway into the fast pathway, and there is a reciprocal activation of the atrium, and impulse is passing from bundle of his to the right bundle as well as left bundle. So this will produce narrow QRS tachyarrhythmia, and after QRS complex we will have a P wave. So P wave will be seen usually after the QRS complex, and that's why we measure RP interval, and depending upon the RP interval we can find out the variety of a tachyarrhythmias, that is a short RP interval or a long RP interval, and that will help you to identify different types of AVNRT or AVRT, typical variety or typical variety. So that is the way of explanation. So try to follow this again. You can go through that again and understand this very well. Again I am repeating, this is a slow pathway, this is a fast pathway. So re-entry is in the AV node itself. The focus is from a AV node. From a slow pathway, it re-enters into the fast pathway. It will pass through the bundle of phase, activate the right ventricle and left ventricle, producing a narrow complex QRS complex tachycardia. And as it is from the AV node re-entry, that's why it is called AV node re-entry tachycardia. And an impulse reciprocating back into the atrium, producing a P wave, which is an abnormal shape of a P wave, usually inverted P wave, after QRS complex. And we measure what we call as a R to P interval, we call RP interval, which helps to identify the different varieties of AVNRT or AVRT, typical variety, atypical variety, etc. Now I am explaining AVRT. Now you can see that impulse has come from above, it has passed through the AV node, and once it passes through the AV node, it passes through the bundle of phase, right bundle, left bundle, activates right ventricle, left ventricle is activated first, then right ventricle is activated. You get a narrow complex QRS tachycardia, and now impulse, instead of now coming from top again, it re-enters from ventricle into atrium, and this is accessory bundle of Kent, and this will be present in WPW syndrome, and then it will re-enter back into AV node. So it is using AV node, but also there is a re-entry from accessory bundle of Kent from ventricle to atrium, and this is in a reverse way, and that's why it is called reciprocating tachyarrhythmias, and this is from atrioventricular reciprocating tachyarrhythmias, and this will produce narrow complex tachyarrhythmias. But when it is from a different pathway, it will produce a broad QRS tachyarrhythmias when it is coming in this direction. So we'll be showing you that in a further chapters. This is a plain simple sinus tachycardia. We have already told you if the rate is between 60 to 100 per minute at the rest, and when it starts beating at a faster rate because of sinus node automaticity, we call that as a sinus tachycardia. It remains same. The QRS complex will remain same. QRS complex. So P wave will be preceding QRS complex. QRS complex will be identical. P wave will be in a direction of a QRS complex, and T wave will be also in a direction of a QRS complex. And then once it comes to the AV node, it will pass in a normal pathway. While in case of an atrium, it is arising from the atrial focus. It goes to the AV node, then later on the pathway is the same. And this will produce a re-entry phenomena. And when it produces a re-entry phenomena, it is beating at a faster rate because of a re-entry, or because of automaticity, or because of the triggered activity. It will produce the rate at 150 to 250 per minute, and that is a variety of an atrial tachycardia which does not take place in case of an atrial tachycardias. So usually in an atrial tachycardia, it is always rate is more than 150. So if the rate is more than 150, always suspect atrial tachyarrhythmias. And in this variety, it is 1:1 conduction. So for each P wave, you will have a 1 QRS complex. And if the person has got paroxysm, so in between there is a normal followed by a run of a tachyarrhythmia, and again person has got a normal rhythm with or without treatment. So there is a spontaneous appearance of a paroxysm and spontaneous recovery, or the person develops this particular in recurrence. We use the word paroxysmal. And when the person responds to a treatment and it becomes normal, we call persistent. P wave morphology will be depending upon from where the atrial focus. So the difference between atrial and sinus is here the P wave morphology will be normal, while in a case of a atrial, P wave morphology will be usually variable, or will be we call abnormal. So I am not going into detail regarding if it arises from the right atrium, if it arises from the left atrium, what will be there. But roughly if I just explain you, if you look in a lead which is corresponding to the right atrium, so the lead which corresponds to the right atrium is lead AVR, and what we call as V1. So usually in a V1, in a right atrial focus and left atrial focus, what will be the picture? This is a right atrial focus, this is a left atrial focus. So if there is a left atrial focus and you are taking a V1 lead, it will be an upright lead, while in a V1 right atrial focus is there, it will be a inverted. In an AV node focus, when it is going in a reverse pattern, in a right atrial focus it is going towards, so you will have an upright wave or what we call as a biphasic wave, while in a lead AVL, because it is a left side focus, left side chamber leads, so in a left chamber lead you will have a biphasic wave. So these are complicated. If you understand, well and good, otherwise forget it. It does not make much difference. So in an atrial tachycardia, we have told you that usually what we do is, you will see that this is the atrial focus which is showing you a different shapes. Say this shape is different, this shape is different, this is different, this is different. So this is multifocal. And if you look at the PR interval, it is changing. And you can see here, this is also shown here. That is, this we call as a RP interval. So RP interval is long and changing. So it is a multifocal atrial tachycardia. And rate, if you calculate, it is almost more than 150. So whenever this is rate is more than 150, it is a variety of a supraventricular tachycardia. And in that you look for an RP interval. If RP interval is longer than PR interval, always suspect multifocal atrial tachycardia. This is multifocal atrial tachycardia. So you can see the shape is different. Shape is different. Is that clear? And if you calculate the RP interval is different and it is changing. So always suspect multifocal atrial tachycardia. In atrial fibrillary flutter, if you look this, what is happening? There is a re-entry very fast in atrium, but some impulse are transmitted. Not all impulse are transmitted. That's why we call as a atrial flutter with a block. If fixed number of impulse are transmitted, we call as a fixed block. Either 2:1 block means 2 impulse, 1 is transmitted. 3:1 block means 3 impulse comes to AV node, only 1 is transmitted. So depending upon that, or if it goes on changing, we call as a variable block. And this fast rate will produce a P wave appearance. This we call as a sawtooth appearance, which is best seen in V1 or you can see in a lead 2. So try to have a look in V1 or lead 2 for a F wave. And the rate of atrium is usually more than 250. We call around 300. So if you get that and if you can identify the P wave, which is a sawtooth appearance, we call that as atrial flutter. And depending upon the block, we call fixed block or variable block. In a variable block, it will be irregular rhythm, while in a fixed block, it will be a regular rhythm. So it can be a regular supraventricular tachycardia, and it can be also in case of an irregular supraventricular tachycardia. While in an atrial fibrillation, the atrium is having a multiple focus and they are beating at the very fast rate between 350 to 500 beats, and that's why there is hardly any atrial contraction. So there is chaotic aortic rhythm, no atrial contraction, so poor ejection into ventricle, so stasis of blood, thrombus formation and thromboembolism, very common in atrial fibrillation. And all these impulses are not transmitted. So some are transmitted, some are not transmitted. And because of that, it produces irregular QRS complex. RR interval is irregular. And this particular, because it is a very fast rate, you can't make out the P wave at all. And this we call as a F wave, or we call fibrillatory wave. And these are classical presentation in case of atrial fibrillation. So characteristic of an atrial fibrillation, irregular RR interval. As P wave is not seen, you can't identify PR interval. P wave is in the form of a fibrillatory wave or we call as a F wave. and this particular will produce either with a fast ventricular rate or with a slow ventricular rate depending upon the block in a AV node. So ventricular rate will be depending on the AV node conduction. So that is atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation we'll be talking separately. It is very, very common in a valvular heart disease, hypertension, digoxin toxicity, ethyl alcohol toxicity, etc. Now we are showing you a variety how exactly the AV node re-entry tachycardia takes place. So as the impulse comes to AV node, now AV node, you can see that in AV node this red circle shows a re-entry from a rapid slow pathway to the rapid pathway, and then one impulse is going to the atrium and one impulse is going to the ventricle, and that produces retrograde transmission to the atrium producing a P wave after QRS complex, and that is typical. That is very, very typical. Will not be able to see, usually the P wave will not be present before QRS complex. QRS complex is narrow and usually P wave is just before the QRS complex. You can see P wave is here. So RP interval is short, and depending upon the RP interval, you can classify them into a classical variety or we call typical variety, atypical variety, etc. You can see clearly here. So this will be that. So in lit 2, if you look at, the P wave will appear like a pseudo S wave, but this is RP, while in a V1 you will have P wave upright, and because of P wave upright this appears as a pseudo R wave. So this is called pseudo S wave in lit 2. But if reciprocating impulse going to the atrium is faster than the ventricle, then P wave will be just before QRS complex, and that will appear like a Q wave. So this we call as a pseudo Q wave. Actually this is P wave before QRS complex, and that is what is the difference. So in a case of a re-entry tachycardias in a AV node, you can have a pseudo S wave, pseudo Q wave, that is P wave before QRS complex. Here P wave is after QRS complex, we call as a pseudo S wave. And if P wave after QRS complex and which is in a V1, because in V1 usually we have got a small r and s, so second R wave will be seen, which is actually not a R wave, we call it a pseudo R wave. It is because of a retrograde transmission of an impulse from a AV node to the atrium that produces pseudo R wave. So this is pseudo S, pseudo Q wave and pseudo R wave. Do remember this. We always calculate RP interval. Here you calculate RP interval. Here it will be PR interval. But this will be almost close to less than even 1 small square. So that is typical of AV and RT, atrioventricular node re-entry tachyarrhythmias. So this is that particular we call as AV node re-entry tachyarrhythmias. And when it passes through the bundle, of Kent, this will show you if it passes in this direction, it will show you a short PR interval because this will pass faster than AV node. So it will produce a short PR and it will join here producing a broad QRS complex. So that broad QRS complex is with a delta wave because of this rapid transmission, and this will be peculiar in case of a WPW syndrome. But while passing, this does not allow to pass. This is concealed, and this will happen if impulse does not pass through the WPW, and then we call this as a concealed. And whenever you get this ECG pattern, we call this as a manifest variety of a WPW. This is showing you AVRT. So how exactly it happens? That impulse comes to the AV node, passes through the ventricle, and retrograde will pass through this accessory bundle to the atrium. You can see here. This one impulse is passing on this side through this accessory bundle. There is no accessory bundle here. So this is passing through the accessory bundle, and that will produce re-entry phenomena. And if it is at a very fast rate, it will produce ventricular reciprocating re-entry tachycardia, and that is going from ventricle to the atrium. That's why we use the word reciprocating, and this will happen in a WPW syndrome. You can see here, when it is passing from ventricle into atrium, we call it as orthodromic, which will be usually narrow complex. But when it is passing from atrium into ventricle, it is usually broad spectrum, broad QRS. So we call antidromic. So when it is a broad QRS, usually it is antidromic, and when it is going from a ventricle into atrium via accessory pathway, it is orthodromic, that is ORT, orthodromic tachyarrhythmias. And orthodromic tachyarrhythmias are usually 95% of the patient, and why only 5% are we call as a retrograde conductions via AV node. So it is a retrograde conduction this way. So it goes in a AV node from ventricle towards atrium. So this is retrograde, and in a bundle of Kent from atrium to the ventricle. So that is a typical antidromic variety, and that is only 5%. And in this variety, you will get a wide QRS tachyarrhythmias. And if a person has got re-entry tachycardia along with accessory bundle of Kent, you can have a broad complex if there is an antidromic transmission, or it is an antidromic. And when it is orthodromic, it is called orthodromic re-entry tachyarrhythmias. So just go through again, you will understand very easily. I have explained you in a most simplified form. So atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia will produce narrow complex, and there is a P wave after QRS complex, we call RP interval. And if RP interval is more than 0.8 second, then it is in favor of a re-entry tachycardia, which is AV nodal re-entry tachycardia. So just have a look at that. And if it is less than point, I've shown you before, if the interval is less, always suspect. Sorry, I could not show that slide. Where that slide is there, we already shown you before that RP interval. On a ground of RP interval, you can classify. I think that is previous. Yes, now it will come. The ground of RP interval. Sorry, I can't show you that slide. Go little slow so you can have that particular slide. Yes, here it is. So if you got an RP interval which is less than 0.2 second, then it is typical AVNRT, and if it is more than 0.8, it is atypical variety. So always keep that thing in mind. This is a very easy way to differentiate typical and atypical variety. So try to go through that. And we call antidromic variety will have that long RP PR interval, or we call long RP interval, long RP interval in a AVNRT with a retrograde conduction, We now go back to that particular slide. So this is that particular. So do remember this. So this will help you to differentiate. If you can differentiate, well and good. Otherwise, it doesn't make much difference. Don't get upset. Don't get panicked if you don't understand this. Yes, you can see here. There is a short PR interval. There is a notch on the ascending limb, and this is a broad QRS complex. Classical WPW syndrome. And this person will always have atrio ventricular reciprocating tachyarrhythmias, or we call re-entry tachyarrhythmias. Is that clear? Why this is orthodromic? Because this is narrow complex. If it was a broad complex, it will be antidromic. So when it passes in an orthodromic variety, that is from ventricle to the atrium, it will be through the bundle of Kent, and in a AV node it is passing from towards AV node towards bundle of His. It will always produce narrow complex, and that is why it is called as a orthodromic atrioventricular reciprocating tachyarrhythmias. Clearly you can see a narrow complex, and when it is treated it will come back to normal. Now you can see here this is a broad complex. This is a broad complex. You can see here this is a broad complex. Broad complex clearly, right? So whenever you see a broad complex QRS tachycardia, you will have to differentiate from VT, but this is what we call as broad QRS supraventricular tachyarrhythmias. And whenever you get that, and if it is because of a AV node re-entry tachycardia, it is antidromic, meaning the impulse is coming from the atrium to the ventricle via bundle of Kent and then reciprocating back to the AV node, from bundle of His to the AV node, and from AV node to again back to the atrium and re-entering back, and re-entry cycle is an antidromic variety, and that's why it is called the antidromic atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia or reciprocating tachyarrhythmia. And this does not require a treatment of ventricular tachycardia, because you should differentiate this, and we will be discussing this in the next chapter. So this is what we call as a short RP interval. You try to look for that, and if there is a long RP interval, it is a atypical variety, or we call as atypical variety of AV node re-entry. Is that clear? While short RP is usually always orthodromic variety. So that is typical to differentiate. Short RP, this is long RP interval, and whenever you get that, try to rule out what we call as a atypical variety of a AV nodal re-entry tachyarrhythmias, or we call antidromic variety. So this is wide complex SVT with aberrancy, and this is nodal tachycardia or AVNRT. This is AVNRT or this is AVRT. But when any one of this is having simultaneously left bundle branch block or a right bundle branch block or a left anterior hemi block or left posterior hemi block, it will produce wide QRS complex tachyarrhythmias. So that we call as a SVT with aberrancy. So that we'll be talking separately. Now what can be the symptoms in case of supraventricular tachyarrhythmia? Yes, if the rate is not very fast, it may be asymptomatic. If the rate is very fast, usually they are symptomatic. Common symptom is palpitation. Person will say that my heart is beating faster. Shortness of breath because of lack of supply of oxygen, decreased cardiac output. Because of decreased cardiac output, hypotension symptoms like pre-syncope, syncope, and sometimes even the person can have a shock stage. He can have a fall. He can develop seizures. He can become unconscious, and that tachyarrhythmia can end up with a cardiac arrest, and person can even have a sudden cardiac death. Very frequently in atrial flutter fibrillation, there is a thrombus formation because of a stasis of blood in left atrium, and person can develop thromboembolic phenomena. Decreased cardiac output because of a hypotension and short stage can produce chest pain, ischemic heart disease, and it can even precipitate acute MI. It can even precipitate congestive heart failure. It is one of the precipitating factor for congestive heart failure, and person can become unconscious, syncope, seizures, and unconsciousness, and can have a sudden cardiac death. So these are all the list of symptoms. There is one more symptom which is very common, that is we call polyuria. That is because of release of ANP, we call atrial natriuretic peptide, in response to increased intraatrial pressure. So because of a rapid rate, the atrial pressure is increased, and that gives rise to release of ANP, and that ANP is against what we call as a effect is against antidiuretic hormone, and it will produce diuresis, and person will complain of polyuria during the episodes, and person can develop a syncope. It is not very common, and usually in absence of tachycardia, usually normal rate is less than 100, but when it is faster, and if the rapid rate is between 150 to 250, means it is more than 150, it is usually in favor of a supraventricular tachycardia. Blood pressure will have a fall, there will be a narrow pulse pressure, and person can even develop a hemodynamic instability, and person who develops a hemodynamic unstable will develop a pre-syncope, syncope, and even sometimes can be unconscious and can develop even a seizures and can have a sudden cardiac death. And whenever there is irregular contractions, neck vein may show you once in a while Cannon waves, and this is very, very common. You can suspect a supraventricular tachycardia. So history wise, if you look in this particular symptom, the percentage wise, palpitation is almost in 96%, dizziness in 75%, shortness of breath is little less, 47%, syncope is very less, 20%, chest pain 35%, fatigue 23%, diaphoresis very less, 17%, nausea vomiting 13%. So these symptoms are less. The most common symptoms is palpitation and dizziness. On physical examination, person will have a tachycardia, tachypnea, distress, hypotension, even you can have a little crackles in a lung because of secondary to heart failure. You can have a S3 sound, and you can have a Cannon waves which can be seen occasionally. We have shown you this slide before. All these look alike. This is sinus tachycardia. This is atrial tachycardia, which is from an ectopic focus, so we call atrial tachycardia. And this is again looks similar, but it is not that. It is a nodal tachycardia, or we call junctional tachycardia. This is sudden run of paroxysm, so paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, and this is sustained ventricular tachycardia. Again, this I have discussed this slide before in a introductory chapter of arrhythmias, that whenever you have a look at ECG, you look at the regularity, rate, QRS complex, narrow or broad, P wave present, absent or abnormal, PR interval which is short, abnormal, QT interval short or long, T wave normal, tall or absent, ST segment elevated or depressed, and it is sustained or non-sustained, and if it is sustained, which variety, etc. All those you look for. This is a big list. Ideally you must go through all these things, and then only you will be able to pinpoint the exact variety of a supraventricular tachycardia. When you go through that, don't forget drug toxicity, and one of the most notorious one is a digitalis, so do keep it in mind. This slide also I have shown you before, that when you go through the stepwise, look at the QRS complex, whether it is regular, irregular, broad or narrow. Look at the presence of P wave morphology, relation with the QRS complex 1:1. AV block is present or not. Look at the PR interval. QRS complex is altered, how it terminates, how it initiates, and if there is a presence of bundle branch block, look at the effect on a QRS complex because of a bundle branch block, because it will produce broad complex tachyarrhythmias. I've shown you these 5 classical questions before. Now we are going to discuss in detail regarding these 5 questions. Sorry, we call 6 questions. First, rate, regularity, P wave morphology, QRS complex wide or narrow, relation of a P wave to QRS complex and PR interval, and rate changes, onset, and how it ends. And then we add this criteria. So we'll be going through this particular one by one. So rate, more than 100, definitely tachyarrhythmias. Rhythm, we'll look at the rhythm, regular, irregular. We'll look at whether P wave is present or not. We'll look at RP interval. We'll look at the P wave relation to QRS complex, and we'll measure PR interval also. Look at QRS complex, broad or narrow, and look at the rate change, whether it is sudden or gradual. And then you look at the effect of all those, whether PAC, that is we call premature atrial contraction, was present, or premature ventricular beat was there before beginning of this rhythm. And how it terminates? It terminates with P wave, it is in favor of a atrium. If it terminates with QRS complex, it is in favor of a ventricular tachyarrhythmias. So, wide or narrow? If it is narrow, more in favor of sinus, paroxysmal supraventricular, atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation. Without aberrancy. Look this, without aberrancy. If it is with aberrancy, it will be wide. So what is wide? All this SVT with aberrancy, left bundle branch block, right bundle branch block, intraventricular conduction defect, or rate related bundle branch block, or antidromic variety. All this will have a aberrancy. And ventricular is always with wide. Very, very rare variety means if the ventricular focus is close to left anterior hemi, fascicle, or it is close to bundle office, it is close to mitral ring, or close to tricuspid ring, in those particular variety, it can be a narrow complex ventricular tachyarrhythmias. And in a pace rhythm, and if the pacemaker starts firing at a faster rate, you will have a broad complex VT. Rare, but it can be. So again, narrow complex by and large always supraventricular, broad complex by and large always ventricular. But remember, in a wide complex, it can be SVT with aberrancy, it can be pace rhythm with, means pacemaker with tachyarrhythmias. So keep that thing in mind. Now if a P wave is present, then look it is how it is related to QRS complex. If P wave is before each QRS complex and PR interval is constant, QRS complex is narrow, P wave is upright, and in the direction of QRS complex it is sinus. And if P wave is abnormal, then it is in favor of atrium. So if you get no P wave, or there is a very short PR, or P wave is hidden in QRS complex, and P wave is inverted, it is paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. By and large, in a paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, P wave is not visible. So always look for this. In atrial flutter fibrillation, the P wave are replaced by flutter wave, we call a sawtooth appearance, which can be misleading. And in atrial fibrillation, it will be a F wave. In a ventricular tachycardia, you will never see P wave. Rarely you see a P wave. And if there is an AV dissociation, then you will see a P wave. So in a AV dissociation, P wave will be seen. But then in that case, the idioventricular rate should be faster than 100. Then only we can use the word tachycardia. So if there is an AV dissociation with fast idioventricular rate, so we call that as ventricular tachycardia with AV dissociation. Then regularity. If it is regular, it is always in favor of a sinus, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, flutter with a fixed block, and pure simple ventricular tachycardia, which is monomorphic variety. While irregular, atrial flutter with variable block, absolutely irregularly irregular, atrial fibrillation and multifocal atrial tachycardia. Also they say that irregularly irregular can be sometime in a polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, which is usually regularly irregular, good number of times. If it is fast, narrow and irregular combination, atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, and this you can diagnose further by using adenosine. And when you give an adenosine fast, within 6 seconds, you will have a change in the rate and you will be able to find out whether it is a fibrillation or flutter. So this is a chart which shows you regular, irregular, we already discussed regarding a RP interval, etc. So just go through that. P wave before, here there is no P wave. This is irregularly irregular. This is regularly irregular. I've already shown this chart before also. So just go through that. Rate. If rate is between 160 to 200, ideally less likely, but in a sinus usually it is close to 100, maximum is 140. If it is less than 140, more in favor of sinus, more than 150, more in favor of supraventricular tachycardia. So in a supraventricular tachycardia, more than 140 we say, but some people say that more than 160, almost very, very common. An atrial flutter, we say close to 300, close to 300. But atrial rate is more than 300, while ventricular rate will be 2:1. So you can just imagine, if it is 300, this will be close to 150, ventricular rate. While in atrial fibrillation, ventricular rate is usually little above 100. It will never be very, very fast. While in a ventricular tachycardia, it is more than 100. Usually in a slow idioventricular rhythm, it is again, I am repeating again, in an idioventricular rhythm, the rate of ventricle is between 20 to 40. And when it is more than 40, less than 100, we call as a rapid idioventricular rhythm. And when it is more than 100, we call that it is with a fast ventricular rate. And then we call that as a ventricular tachycardia when it is above 100. So do keep it in mind. So in a idioventricular rhythm, the rate is always, ventricular rate is always less than 40. But if ventricular rate is more than 100, it is a fast rate, what is happening. And then we label that as a ventricular tachycardia. And along with that, you will usually have what we call as a AV dissociation. So this is depending upon the rate. Same thing is shown here. You can just go through what I have repeated. How it stops? In sinus, usually it starts gradual. In paroxysmal supraventricular, onset is sudden. In atrial flutter, always it is sudden. While in atrial fibrillation, it is changing. It may be slow, it may be fast. But by and large, the onset is sudden. While in ventricular tachycardia, it is always sudden. So this is onset. And when you terminate, it will depend upon how it terminates. It may be rapid or it may be slow. And whenever it terminates with a P wave, it is more in favor of sinus and supraventricular and atrial. That is, these are all supraventricular. And when you see a QRS complex, we call escape rhythm, it is more in favor of a ventricular tachyarrhythmias. So this is a narrow complex QRS, narrow QRS complex tachyarrhythmias. So this is more in favor of a supraventricular tachycardia rather than ventricular tachycardia. Again, you can see the person is having a narrow complex QRS tachycardia. This is again supraventricular tachyarrhythmias, and you can see a pseudo R wave. This is in favor. In this previous one, try to look in a V1. You will be able to make out a pseudo R wave. Here I can't see a pseudo R wave. Is it clear? And if you want to see for the Q wave, you will have to look in a lame lids, that is lid 2. I can't see a pseudo Q wave also. Rarely. It is not clear. Here pseudo R wave is clear. Absolutely clear. Here I can't see a Q wave clearly. And I can't make out a S wave. Pseudo S wave. This is pseudo R wave. You can see again a pseudo R wave. But there is a irregular rhythm. Irregular rhythm. Again you can see that there are F waves. This is atrial flutter. This is a broad complex QRS tachycardia. Broad complex. Is that clear? And this will be AV entry, AV node. And when you go through the tachyarrhythmias, go through this chart. I'm putting this chart, go through at leisure time. I'm going very fast. That whenever you get a tachycardia, always look at the narrow or broad. I'm not going to talk about this at present. We are talking only of a narrow complex supraventricular tachycardia. And if it is a narrow complex supraventricular tachycardia, look at the regularity. If it is regular, go through this particular part. If it is irregular, go through this. So irregularly irregular, atrial fibrillation. Regular, and if it is regularly irregular, look at the P wave, and depending upon the P wave, you will look for. Now that is ECG wise. Now what you do in this, if there is a P wave present, so it is definitely supraventricular. Then in that case, you see the response of carotid sinus massage, and if it terminates after QRS complex, and if terminates after P wave, if it terminates and there is an AV block, then this is the possibility. So there are three ways of termination in carotid sinus massage. If terminates after P wave, it is AVNRT or AVRT, and if terminates after QRS complex, then AVNRT, AVRT, or atrial tachycardia or sinus node re-entry tachycardia. And then you will have to look at the P wave morphology and try to identify whether it is AVNRT, atrial tachycardia, or sinus node re-entry tachycardia. And if it is ending with AV block, then it is atrial flutter or atrial tachycardia, or we call multifocal atrial tachycardia, or sinus node re-entry tachycardia. And if it is clearly visible that it is 1:1 ratio, and if there is a pseudo R wave in V1, it is more in favor of an AVNRT, and if there is no pseudo R wave, then go and look for RP interval and try to find out typical variety or atypical variety. So this is little complicated. Whatever I have discussed before, it's mentioned here, compiled together in one single slide. If you don't understand, you can ask me personally at any time. I'll try to make it as simple. A part of this, what you look in a P wave is mentioned here. So P wave present, no. If it's yes, this is possibility. If no, irregularly irregular, regular, what are the possibilities? If it is a narrow complex, look at the RP interval. If it is less than 0.2, these are the possibilities. If it is more than 0.2, means close to 0.8, long RP interval, these are the possibilities. These are the four possibilities. And if it is less than 0.2, these are the two possibilities, AVRT and typical AVNRT. So just go through at leisure time. And when you look at the P wave, if pseudo R wave, pseudo S wave, or there is what we call as an STT changes, what are the possibilities? That is mentioned here. So all those are splitted up. So whenever you are free, go through, you will be able to identify. Normally, what are the common investigation? 12 lead ECG. If you can't pick up, and if it is paroxysmal, Holter monitoring, loop recording, or you can even go for what we call as a MCOT. If you can't identify, then you might require a further investigation in case of a cardiomyopathy, asymptomatic atrial fibrillation like echocardiography, etc., which can help you to identify. In a exercise induced tachyarrhythmias, or we call stress induced tachyarrhythmias, you can go for TMT test. You can go for an EPS study when it is very, very difficult to identify the abnormal pathways. So these are all the different investigation you can go for. These are same tachyarrhythmias which are being shown. These are supraventricular tachycardia, but you will have to identify it belongs to what. So you can go for ambulatory echocardiogram. You can go for echo studies, stress test studies, and you can go for cardiac catheterization when you are suspecting ischemic heart disease. An electrophysiological study is required whenever there is a complicated variety of tachyarrhythmias and you want to find out AVNRT or AVRT. I have repeated again and again. All those are mentioned in a one single differential diagnosis chart. At your leisure time, you can go through. It is a very elaborative varieties I have collected from the different chapters. So try to go through this. Now what treatment you can give in a case of a supraventricular tachyarrhythmias? Whenever you diagnose a supraventricular tachycardia, which is a narrow complex supraventricular tachycardia, and you don't suspect narrow QRS VT, you always go for what we call as a vagal stimulation. Very, very simple. In a vagal stimulation, we'll show you what are the different techniques. Or you can go for a drugs like adenosine, or you can give an oral drugs like CCB, beta blockers, or class 1A variety of antiarrhythmics. And if that does not give you response, you can go for a DC conversion, or we call as a cardioversion. If person is unstable, cardioversion is a first choice, second choice is a drug. When the person is stable, first choice is vagal stimulation followed by a drug. And if this two does not produce a response, then only cardioversion. And for permanent relief, in a case of a re-entry tachycardias, particularly atrial re-entry tachycardias, ventricular re-entry tachycardias, and AV node re-entry tachycardia, and in case of a accessory bundle like WPW syndromes, or we call as a atrioventricular re-entry tachycardia, whether it is orthodromic or antidromic, both variety, radio frequency ablation is a most important thing. So treatment will depend upon the basic etiology. So this is a chart which shows you a wide QRS tachyarrhythmias, narrow QRS tachyarrhythmias. We are talking of a narrow QRS, so that is a supraventricular tachycardia, and that is a chart which is shown here. Atrial fibrillation, multifocal atrial tachycardia, and atrial flutter with variable block, which will produce irregular rhythm. And this is what you do and how you identify. And if it is regular rhythm, how you identify. I've already discussed before. And this is supraventricular tachycardia with aberrancy. This is how you identify. But this we'll be discussing when we discuss wide QRS and how you differentiate SVT with aberrancy from ventricular tachyarrhythmias. So this is one chart which I've put here. You can go through for differential diagnosis. This is what tachyarrhythmias which we follow the normal rule. We always say if it is stable, you got adequate time, you can wait for a while. But if it is unstable, straightforward you have to go for a cardioversion. And in a cardioversion, always start with what we call as 100 joules. Never go to the 300 joules and 400 joules. Always, by and large, use monophasic first, followed by a biphasic. So, in that particular variety, in a unstable variety, what we call is if a person has got hypotension and it is a narrow complex, always go for a synchronized cardioversion, either a monophasic or a biphasic DC conversion, or we call it a cardioversion. Say it is stable, then check the ECG. It is wide QRS, I am not discussing at present. This is wide QRS with aberrancy, but treatment remains same. In a narrow QRS, irregular rhythm, regular rhythm. Irregular rhythm, atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation. Keep those two things apart. And MAT. With this we'll be discussing in detail in a separate chapter. While if it is a regular rhythm, whether it is sinus, whether it is atrial, or whether it is atrial flutter with a fixed block, the treatment will change. We'll be discussing in a subsequent slides. So try to follow this particular chart. If it is a wide QRS with a regular rhythm, it is ventricular tachycardia, treatment will be absolutely different. And if it is irregular rhythm with wide QRS, it is usually atrial fibrillation with WPW or atrial fibrillation with aberrancy like bundle branch block, etc. So try to look for that particular group, or sometimes you can come across in a torsa de pointes, which is a variety of a ventricular tachyarrhythmias which can produce irregular rhythm with a wide QRS complex, or it can be polyphasic ventricular tachyarrhythmias. So always that torsa de pointes is polyphasic ventricular tachyarrhythmias. So try to look in that particular group. So now in case of a supraventricular tachycardias, you look for what we call as a supraventricular tachyarrhythmias, stable, unstable. If it is unstable, cardioversion is first, starts with the lowest way, 50, then 100, 200, 300, and then go up. Never start directly with 350, 300, etc. And in case of what we call as a good perfusion or a stable variety, vagal maneuver first, then followed by adenosine, 6 milligram IV stat, wait for a while, then you can increase the dose to 12, and then wait again and you can repeat the third dose of 12. Usually you will get effect within 5 to 6 seconds. And if you don't get results, then you can think of verapamil, diltiazem, maybe in an injectable form. And if a person has got a congestive heart failure, you can use digoxin, you can use amiodarone, and go for cardioversion, but always have an expert opinion. So try to follow this particular chart. This is a base chart which is available and very easy way to understand. Same thing is explained in a little expanded form. This is a wide spectrum or wide QRS tachyarrhythmias. We don't go at present. We'll be discussing when we discuss a ventricular tachyarrhythmia. So vagal stimulation followed by adenosine followed by verapamil, or you can use a beta blocker. If termination is there, yes, well and good. If it doesn't terminate, then you will have to go for other and think of tachyarrhythmias with different types of AV blocks. Always go through that. What are vagotonic maneuvers? One maneuver is a carotid sinus massage. Always do a gentle massage in a carotid sinus. Never do massage in a two sides simultaneously. And always look for carotid bruit before doing a carotid sinus massage. Otherwise, if there is a thrombus, you will produce thromboembolism. Carotid sinus or Valsalva maneuver or facial ice pack or Muller maneuver or even gagging, all this will produce effect if it is sinus or if it is atrial. If it doesn't produce, don't try again and again. So what will be the response? The person may terminate the QRS complex very rarely in a ventricular reciprocating rhythm. If tachycardia persists with AV block, it is more in favor of an atrial tachycardia or atrial fibrillation or sinus node re-entry tachycardia. Now this you have to keep it in mind. So if a person responds to carotid sinus massage, don't try adenosine. If it doesn't respond, try adenosine. And if you try adenosine and within 5 to 6 seconds, if arrhythmia terminates with P wave, it is usually AVNRT or atrial premature beat induced, or we call ectopic atrial tachycardias. And if it ends with QRS complex, then it is more in favor of a ventricular reciprocating rhythm. Do pay attention to this. So if there is an hemodynamic stable, unstable, always go for direct cardioversion. If it is stable, usually vagal maneuver, adenosine, followed by verapamil or diltiazem, or now they use a beta blocker, that is sotalol. And if this also does not produce response, it is refractory, you will have to go again for a cardioversion, and you might have to go for what we call as a radio frequency ablation, depending upon that. This is a small chart showing you for a short-term management, usually in a hemodynamically unstable and stable variety. And this is a long-term management which is mentioned in a patient who develops a recurrent supraventricular tachycardia or person who has got a persistent supraventricular tachycardia. Long-term management. At a leisure time, you can go through whatever I mentioned before. Same thing is repeated. And if there is a refractory case, you will require atrial pacing with direct cardioversion, or if there is a narrow complex or narrow QRS tachyarrhythmias, adenosine should be followed by procainamide or amiodarone, and if that also does not produce response, atrial pacing with direct cardioversion. That should be the way you should proceed. This is a difference between an acute variety and a long-term treatment. During acute episode, this is a treatment what is being preferred, and this is a long-term. This is a treatment which is being preferred. You can undergo this particular at a leisure time. Complications in a supraventricular tachycardia, usually when they develop a hypotension, they can have a syncope. Because of syncope, fall and injury. If the fall of blood pressure is more, person can have a symptom signs of a shock stage, and person can be unconscious sometime and can even have a convulsions. Because of stasis in a atrium, particularly left atrium, there is a thrombus formation and there is a chance of thromboembolism. Very more common in a atrial flutter fibrillation. Hypotension Person can have a chest pain and precipitation of even acute MI. It can even precipitate congestive heart failure. Because of severe hypotension, person can even become unconscious and can have a seizures. And person can go from a supraventricular tachycardia into a very bad variety of tachyarrhythmias and can go into cardiac arrest and sudden cardiac death. Here I end my lecture. I hope this will be helpful. If you can identify a supraventricular tachycardia, which are narrow complex supraventricular tachycardia, and what it belongs to, whether it belongs to the sinus tachycardia or atrial tachycardia or nodal tachycardia, and if it is narrow complex, whether it is AVNRT or AVRT, it is orthodromic or antidromic, the treatment will change depending upon the type of supraventricular tachyarrhythmias. All look same, but treatment is different. I hope this will be helpful to you. See you again now in the next leading chapters, which will be discussing in a broad QRS tachyarrhythmias and difference between SVT with aberrancy and ventricular tachyarrhythmias.